Well, as Karen said, I'm my friend referred to me as the medical sub today. anyone who follows the football, so do bear with me. I've got 6 really great questions written, and all of the preparation was done by Kelly. I've done very little. I've done a Trevor Young cram for the big test, so please go easy on your reviews. So the first thing we have to talk about is on your website, on the keynote kind of topics section of your website. Smart marketing today is about humanity, humility, passion, and value. As Kelly says, a great 4 words. So can we talk about what each of those mean in a more broad and deeper context?
Now I've got to remember which of the 4. So the first one's humanity. So I'm going to talk about more in context of PR, marketing, communications, branding, personal brands. So it does fly across all of them. I think today humanity means, in the way I look at it, is when businesses to over-index on their people. So content plays a big role in what I talk about. I believe in content first. I think every business now can become its own media company. You're a media company first that happens to sell whatever it is you sell. And humanity means taking people behind the scenes. People, for too long, particularly corporations, they were seen as faceless, and people like seeing behind the public face of an organisation. And that's where smaller businesses have got it over everyone, because they're in a better position to do it. So humanity also means dealing with your customers. They're not, target markets or things like that. They're, we were just saying earlier that a lot about marketing is very militaristic, and it's kind of, I like flipping it. So humanity means you're putting the audience first. So if I look at humanity and then humility, the two go together, because you're putting your people first. Your people are out there with the content. The leaders are out of the shadows of the boardroom. People can see the whites of your eyes. There's a lot of authenticity, but it's also treating your customers and the general community with a little bit more respect. And businesses for too long have interrupted people to tell the world how great they are, and that doesn't really cut it today, unless you've got deep pockets like Harvey Norman. And so I think with humility, that means that you've got to look at having an audience and building an audience and a community of customers, but also fans and advocates, supporters, champions of your brand, your business, what it is you do and you stand for. And so humility means that you're putting the customers first. What's of interest and relevance to them. So rather than I'm selling to this target market, who do we serve? Who do we serve? And so it's just a bit of a flip of how we approach marketing and business generally. Third one was passion. So if we, the great thing with businesses that are creating content today, and when a business could be a micro business of one person, a solopreneur, it could be a growing business, it could be a large company. Those that are doing content, doing it really, really well, becoming their own media channel, building their own audience, they are doing it with passion and enthusiasm, because if you don't, you'll get found out pretty quick. There's so much content out there. People will gravitate to those who are enthusiastic about not just their products, but how they can help people. What value can they deliver? So this dovetails into the value. So if you're not passionate about creating content, if you're not passionate about running your business and about your customers and the broader community in which you serve, then people will, they'll be able to tell. And so the value is, again, bringing that back to, of course, value in what you do, your services and products, but what value do you bring over and above your products and services? Mm-hmm. And the best marketers today deliver value without the expectation of getting anything in return. And so if you look at old school, was I've got products and services I'm going to pitch you all the time, to I'm going to serve an audience, I'm going to deliver you value without the expectation of getting anything in return. and hopefully over the journey you'll like us, you'll respect us for what it is we do, and we'll educate you, we'll inspire you, hopefully, maybe entertain you, inform you.
And those four, on a more personal level, I mean, if that's kind of the framework in which you think about these things, which one do you think affects you kind of the most? If you look at a business or you look at a marketing campaign, which of those four do you personally think is most relevant? And then broadly to the audience in which they're marketing to, how does the audience interact with those four?
Well, I think value, because if you can bring value across everything, I think, if you're showing up on social media, if you're showing up on YouTube, if you're, creating content, whatever you're doing, are you bringing enough value? Because if you're not, you'll get disregarded pretty damn quickly. So I think value is the one that I've always looked at. And from day one of social media, like back on Twitter in 2007, it was all about what can you bring to the online community? What value do you bring? And now it's just a de rigueur that, you've got to bring value, otherwise you won't last long. And without the expectation of, so you that generosity of spirit has to come through. So I think that if companies and businesses and business owners, all they do is deliver value all the time, then no one's ever gone wrong being useful and helpful and adding value. But humility is a really nice trait. We certainly like that as human beings as well.
Absolutely. I mean, perhaps we don't see too much of it these days, especially on Twitter. We were talking before about some of the stuff we see. On your books, Karen mentioned you're an author. I want to know about a brief description of the books themselves. I also want to know a little bit about how kind of creative ideas come to you. How do you have ideas for books? Where do they come from?
Over there,
just take them. And I suppose the writing process about how perhaps physical environment, perhaps mental environment, about how the best ideas come out of Trevor Young.
All right. You might have to remind me about that last one.
Sure.
But, the first one is two books, yes. Microdomination. Today, in business books, you do have a really short, this was kind of a trend when I did that one. You have a really short name that is kind of abstract, and then you have a really long, it's there, isn't it? A really long, don't ask me to say what it is because I've forgotten what the subtitle is. Really long subtitle. And that's one of the rare ones where the subtitle took up more room than the actual title. So that was I guess I do talk about getting out there, being on blogs, social media, doing videos or podcasts, whatever it is. I used to run a business. I was known in my industry, but in the PR and marketing industry. But once I started blogging, it got me out, and social media got me out into broader spheres, more business community, more broadly. And I had, because I built that profile, I had one of the world's biggest business book publishers asked me if I wanted to publish a book with them, which I did, which was this one, which was fantastic. And kind of that was nice because that was what the book was about people who, a new breed of entrepreneur who was creating content, becoming their own marketing channel, their own media channel, and building an audience and a community, and then building a business around their expertise. So that's what that was. I really went with the publisher because I wanted to see it in airport bookstores, and we achieved that, which was nice. And it took 3 months to write that one, and I didn't even know what the book was about, and I'd burned out 2 weeks of the 3 months before I even knew what the book was going to be about. So
is that a little bit how it works? It's a workhorse approach. Just get in there,
yeah,
throw some darts at the wall and see what happens.
Look, having a deadline is really good. The first thing the publisher will do is create you the cover. So that's to get you, inspire you, to get you excited to print it and put it on the wall.
It's a real thing.
It's a real thing. They're not mucking around. And there's a deadline because they print overseas. It has to hit the printing press at a certain time, get on the ship, get over. As I was continually being reminded during the editing phase, if I don't get this from the editor, if I don't get this back by Friday, there is no book.
Right.
So that speeds the process up. But 3 months is pretty good. You're writing pretty full on for that. The second book is called Content Marketing for PR, and I self-published that. It was a bit bigger of a book. It took me a lot longer to write because I had no deadline because I self-published. And the tools and the platforms and the infrastructure today to write your own book and have it published are insane. Like you could press 3 buttons and have it up on Amazon and all of these other types of online marketplaces, literally pressing 3 buttons. Like it's madness.
Yeah.
So everyone today can be a global publisher, and you can have audio, print on demand, and every digital way of doing it. So I've gone through that. I loved learning that process, and I just think the opportunities for people now who want to write can get their book out at a lot. They don't need a publisher. You actually don't need a publisher. And the going back in the older days when you did self-publish, you had to do a minimum print run of 1,000 books, and there's a lot of publishers out there who have still got 900 books in their.
They're great though. They're very good.
They're very good.
They're very
books,
good.
In their garage, and the only way to sell it was off your website and whatever. So today you don't have to do that. People can buy it on demand. There's luckily a printing press in Melbourne that. A company that services bookstores all around the world, and it's print on demand. You want 10 copies? Done.
Yeah, right.
So it's fantastic.
So in the first book, Microdomination, you're showing people how to tap into their passions, build, sustain a brand around themselves.
Yep.
So would you say marketing, PR, using social media is your professional passion? And maybe tell us a bit more about a private passion of yours that we might not be aware of.
The professional passion, yes, content more generally, how that dovetails into PR, personal branding, content marketing, whatever, and social, it kind of fuels everything. So it's the art of creating content for an audience and then building that audience around that content. So I love the fact, having been in PR through the earlier days when a lot of PR was about pitching the media. It's not today, but it used to be in those days. And there were gatekeepers, and they were called editors and producers and journalists and stuff. The fact that you can now be that, run your own magazine, run your own podcast, and get it out to the world from your kitchen table without any barriers is, and virtually no money down, is still astounds me, 15 years later. So I still have a passion, and that's what I help people do that, create that, get their ideas out of their head, and however they want to, whichever medium they want to do.
And when you're not doing that, what can we find you doing?
I'll only say Geelong Footy Club, of course.
There
it has to be up there.
From the study that I've done on the Twitterverse, there is a lot of commentary on.
Well, I found my tribe on Twitter where there are all these Geelong people. After each game, we have this big love.
Well, luckily for you, there's plenty of wins. I'm in the North Melbourne. In the North Melbourne Twitter blogs, there's not really that much positivity flying around for the last 25 years.
But that's the main one. But I mean, I guess my not so secret one is to write the great Australian crime novel, gangster novel, which has been in the offing for about 10 years. So I write so much, I don't get time to write what I want to write. So
right, there you go.
That'll come out one day.
Oh, beautiful. And we'll be here for the book launch as well when it is. Micro Mavens is a theme throughout Microdomination, not something that I've heard before, nor had Kelly heard before. We just want to know a little bit about what it is, what's the phrase, can anyone be this, and what's that all about?
Micro Mavens were that breed, I said, of entrepreneur that creates the content, and today they're called influencers. So Micro Mavens was I guess the identification of this trend of these people who were doing that. Now they're doing it as influencers. Right. So it's become a job.
Yep.
So that predates influencers. So that was prediction of influencers, probably the world's first prediction of influencers. There you go. No one else has said they predicted influencers, so I'm taking it now.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Before we got up here, we're talking a little bit about thought leaders. We're talking about that kind of in your what's coming up.
Yep.
It kind of ties into that area a little bit, and kind of how do you be a thought leader? When do you know you are a thought leader? And with so much information around and so many experts everywhere, how do we know the ones to listen to?
Okay, so if we put influencers over to one side, so I was being a little flippant about influencers. So that whole Micro Maven influencer thing basically is people who create their content. They build an audience, and then they serve that audience however they serve it. Some do it, they do sponsored posts for Instagram, others have got ads on podcasts. So
It seems to be very much the kind of the commercial. It's a profession.
Yeah, well, I stay away from kind of like the Instagram and TikTok influencer side. I'm not interested in that. I deal with people who have been around the block a fair bit. They've got expertise to share. They're experts at what they do, and they share. Well, they want to share that. It's ironically the people who have got most of the credibility are less likely to put themselves out there, which I find very frustrating. So that's my mission, is to get those people out there into the marketplace. Yeah. Whereas, there's a lot of people who are very good marketers, very slick, tell a good story, know every copywriting trick under the sun, and they look good, and they do run good business. They run pretty big businesses, but if you scratch beneath the surface, there's not much there, and that kind of worries me a little bit. The whole thought leader versus expert thing, I like to unpack that because a lot of people self-identify as thought leaders. It's like being a leader. You don't say you're a thought leader, for number one. So if someone says they're a thought leader, they probably aren't. And there's some people who are really good experts. They've got deep domain expertise, and that's their strength. And they can teach you all about that and how to do it, and that's what they do. Thought leaders probably go a bit more joining of dots, and so there might be trends they look at. They might bring these disparate things together. They might explore ideas in public. They'll challenge you with their thinking. So a good expert will teach you what to do, how to do it, and people will gravitate to that because they're interested in that topic. Thought leaders probably push the boundaries a lot more and provoke thought, and you might not agree with them. You might get angry at them as well, but they're quite contrary in what they talk about. And so they're trying to push the boundaries of thought a lot more. Yeah. So they might be more provocative in what they write about, and they're not necessarily being useful and helpful. They're more being thought-provoking.
Maybe they feel they have a responsibility to educate and to engage with almost kind of that push-pull thing we talk about as well. That perhaps thought leaders are different to influencers in that regard, whereas influencers are kind of telling you, right, and thought leaders are asking you, perhaps.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. And I mean, there's a bit of grey area. You can be a bit of both, and I don't want to get into semantics on it, but it's just that some people are really good at. I deal with people who are genuine thought leaders. They push the boundaries, and I read and I follow a lot of good ones because I want my thinking challenged. A lot of experts might not challenge your thinking, but if you want to become a good live streamer or a YouTuber or a podcaster or anything, gardener, anything, there are experts who can help you in those niches and then sub-niches and then sub-niches. And that's fine when that's what you want, but sometimes you need to have your thinking challenged in a particular industry. And now the thought leaders might also inspire you to take action, to do something different. So there's room for both, but my thing is we want to hear from them. Right. We want those people.
That's where the frustration comes from.
That's where the frustration comes from. I want to hear from the really good people who have got it in their heads and who are generous and want to get it out. That's a bit like writing a book. A good book will write itself. It'll demand to be written.
Beautiful. Well, these are thoughts that you've shared all over in business events and conferences in Australia and overseas. A little bit about nerves. I want to talk about nerves. Certainly, I'm experiencing plenty tonight. And the techniques and mantras in dealing with nerves and dealing with large groups of people and diverse and broad ranges of people as well.
So if I go back a bit, my story, again, I was in PR, so I pulled the strings. I didn't have to be on TV. I didn't have to be on stage. I pushed other people.
It's a damn shame, I think.
I pushed people out to do it, and I hated the thought. I literally hated it. So when I was in my industry and I did the industry conferences, I absolutely hated it. I was almost scripted, which is the worst thing to do. It was just ridiculous. I just hated it. Just like most people. What was Jerry Seinfeld? He said most people would rather die than read the eulogy, which was,
those people who feared public speaking over death.
Yeah, that's it.
In a study, yeah.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy. And so I had to get over that hurdle because, again, once I started blogging and putting myself out there, then I was starting to be asked to speak. And luckily enough, a lot of that early days was on panels, so that made life a lot easier because you're just asking questions and you kind of knew you're If you're in front of the game a little bit, you knew more than the audience, and that was probably okay. Why I did it was because I was passionate about social media in those days, because it was really new, 07, 08, 09 sort of things, really new, and people were really interested in it. And so the audiences were really receptive. And then it started getting a little bit more serious. So I probably did 50 talks before I got paid. And I got, my first paid client was Stonington Council, and it was a stupid amount, a low stupid amount, because I didn't know what to charge. And then I was doing a free gig for what was called the CEO Institute, and just talked to a smaller group of CEOs. And a week later, this bloke rings me and he says, "Oh, hi, I'm Barry. I run one of the biggest speakers bureaus in the country. Are you interested in doing a gig?" So I said,
I might be, yeah.
"I might be, that's interesting." Yeah. So that was a bit of serendipity. You make your own luck by getting out there. And anyway, he pitched me into La Porchetta. Was my first proper, the annual conference of La Porchetta was my first main speaking gig with an agent. And he laughed at the fee, and he said, "Well, make that times that by 5.
Right.
And so that just changes the ball game. So then the difference is when you're being paid to speak versus just getting up and speaking at a meetup or a conference, that changes the dynamic a bit, because often when you're speaking at a conference, you can be a bit of a Trojan horse for a message that the management want to get out to the troops.
Yeah. Go and tell them what I've been saying.
The nervousness is not necessarily about getting up and speaking, because once you do it enough times, you kind of get a bit okay with that. You learn to control that side of things. It's more about, am I doing the best job that I can for the fee and the client?
Yeah, beautiful.
So there's that. There's no mantras. There's just preparation. If you're prepared, you'll be fine. If you're not, you'll be more nervous.
Yeah, right, beautiful. What were you like in high school, essentially, is the question. And can you see a progression from the high school boy to the journalist to now the PR warrior? And what I want to add on to that is who were the early heroes and who were the more professional heroes later on in the career?
I come from the country, so little place. Who's heard of Warwick Nabil? Oh, yeah, excellent. My dad was a bank manager, so we moved around a bit. But I did my senior schooling in Warwick Nabil, and then went on the paper in Warwick Nabil as well. 3,000 people, no hills, lots of wheat, not much else. And because there was not much else, that had a big effect on me, ironically, because there was nothing to do.
Yeah.
So literally, apart from sport, but then you take sport out of the equation, there's nothing for kids, nothing. I was lucky enough to play in a band, so I did get around and play in a band. But drums.
Good man.
Drums. But the main thing was, because there was nothing to do, we had to create our own entertainment. So we created when we had nothing to do, we created an organisation to do something, and we called it WET, Warwick Nabil Entertainment by Teenagers.
Beautiful name. The marketing flair was
I know.
Really.
It took a while to come up with that one.
I like that.
But then under that banner, we created we produced a rock opera during school holidays, a rock opera based on Alice Cooper songs.
Naturally.
And we had two teachers who supported us, and they helped us, and we put on 5 performances on that. And then the next year we did a big comedy review, which wasn't that funny. And but WET then started to take a life of its own. You had a committee, president. I think I was president. I would have made myself president.
Self-appointed. Yeah.
Self-appointed. But we were making money off the stage productions, and then we ran the dances, the local dances. So we were making money. And rather than sell drugs at these things, and turn that into a profitable exercise, we decided we'll take a lease on a shop, and we ran a cafe, so a drop-in centre.
Yeah.
So probably the worst coffee you'll ever have, and mostly soft drinks, and no alcohol. And then we ran the cinema, the local cinema, because that came up. They were going to close that down, which was the town hall. So we ran the cinema, and the kids ran it. So we ran the dance, we ran the town.
That sounds like a terrible movie, like a really bad movie.
There's no punchline. No. So we ran all the entertainment in basically in the town for the kids, for the kids, by the kids.
Wow, that's really cool.
And so that moved on. And when I look back, well, then that was all marketing, promotion, creativity, creating stuff from nothing, and the music thing took hold. So I played in a band, then I started a booking agency for other bands in the area, and then I, as a 20-year-old, Cold Chisel was the biggest band in the land, and I put in a call and got them to Horsham and staged a big concert.
There you go.
And I think the tickets were something like $12 or something ridiculous.
There you go. So heroes in terms of professional now. Look, I know there's plenty of people you don't like. You take two of them on Twitter. Generally heads of social media companies. Are not doing the right thing. Who are the people that inspired you early that inspire you now?
Not so much now. They've been the mentors. So whenever I've worked in a newspaper, my first editor taught me a lot. I didn't go to uni to learn. I learnt first day in the newspaper was I want a back page lead. The owner of the business, he said, I want the back page lead in 25 minutes. And I had no idea what to do, but you learn. So I learnt on the job there. So every editor I had, and then I went to Hamilton and worked on the newspaper there, and my sports editor was just literally the biggest man I've ever known. He was the son of Joe Lyons, the Prime Minister, and Dame Enid Lyons. And he was one of the funniest blokes I've ever had, but he was, as an editor, he was just spot on and never took it too seriously. And so I learned a lot from him, and I just learned then came down and where Karen and I worked at a company called PPR. Harry Smith was our boss and learned a lot from him, and then I went to another PR agency. So if I've done anything, I've picked good companies to work at and good people that I learned a lot from. So my mentors have been my bosses, so I've been really lucky in that regard. Today it's more about probably not authors that people would know, and I wouldn't even call them heroes. I mean, they're just a lot of good thought leaders. So I follow a guy called Mark Schaefer, who I really like, written best-selling books. I've been lucky enough to have him on my podcast. Seth Godin is a really good business writer who's been blogging probably every day since 2007. Like, you want to talk a body of work, that's not bad. And I just really like people who are out there actually doing stuff. So, not heroes, but I learn from all of them. What are they writing about? What buttons are they pushing?
Take bits and pieces.
Are they evolving? That's, I think that when you've been following people for 10 years and something, and none of them are doing the same thing. They're all really evolving. And in an industry, which is online marketing, everyone says you've got a niche and never go out of your niche. The ones that are moving and evolving are the ones that are interesting and you learn from. And what they do is that they share their mistakes, they share their learnings, and that comes back down to that humility. Because too often we come back to influencers, we see the shiny, curated life, but we don't see the other side. And in business, we want to see the other side.
Beautiful. So what's next? We've reflected a lot tonight, but is there anything in the pipeline that we should be excited about besides the great crime thriller?
Yeah, be waiting a bit for that.
Okay. Anything in the more immediate future?
Yeah, I'm about to launch, hopefully. It's out of internet this week, so I'm back down a day. No internet today, so that frustrates me. I'm setting up a training organisation called the Credible Authority Academy. So that's to teach experts and aspiring thought leaders to get out there and do their thing and to build their audience and to grow their brand. And so very much around personal branding and thought leader and expert marketing. So that will have a masterclass and group coaching, because I've done some group coaching last year, and turning them all into online products. So that's been a hell of a learning curve to do that. Building the website now, writing the content. So that will become its own brand, probably become a book. Just kicked off the podcast season 6 this week, and just finding a bit of zest for that little bit more focused area. So rather than work across too many things,
beautiful.
Create products. So this is probably the first time I'm creating, apart from books, actually creating products. So I've always been in the services. So creating products, so it's a whole new learning,
It's
learning curve.
It's a thing. It's a
thing. It's
yeah.
a whole new thing, whole
Yeah.
new learning curve.
Yeah. And in terms of questions, that's all we have tonight. I wonder if there are any questions from the floor. I'm sure Trevor wouldn't mind answering those, and then I think there's some chatting afterwards, and I think we've got some books as well.
They're in the car. Actually.
Got some books in the car. We'll get those, and that concludes. Unless anyone's had any questions. Yes, Joseph.
In your time when you've been advising people or companies on PR and social media, has there ever been a time where you've been proven wrong in a positive way?
Proven wrong? In a positive way. Look, it's certainly not an exact science, the consulting game, and I think that you're always, when you're doing campaigns for clients, we worked with some pretty big brands for a very long time, and we created a lot of campaigns, and not every campaign is going to knock it out of the park. I think the frustration in the PR game, in particular in those campaigns, is you say, this is going to really hit. This is a story. I can see this being covered by the media. And then you have an event, and no one turns up. And they're the hard things with PR, because in advertising, you pay money and you do get your coverage. In PR, you've got to create an event, a stunt. You've got to pitch a story. A journalist might do the story, it never gets up. A photographer will turn up, take the photos, spend an hour with the client, all good. It never runs. So it's the frustration is you say, I'm confident on this and this is going to get up, and it doesn't. So that's just the PR lot in life. All you can do is really make sure you've got it done everything possible and given every story the best chance of getting up. We always had a saying that we can, lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, that whole thing. And think, maybe war will break out, and we won't get our story up. We launched the IKEA in Victoria Gardens, and all the media turned up, which was fantastic. And then war broke out, and we got nothing on the TV. So that was incredibly frustrating. But at least we said we'd get them there. We didn't never promise. You can never promise on the coverage that you'll get. But that was always the thing, and you always learn, why didn't this work?
Jackie?
Just to lead up to that, just published a book, and Shane Warne died when I had my PR campaign going on, and everything I lost quite a few interviews, and they came back. I think my question is, when you do something like that, I have trouble being relevant. Somebody, a PR person who was doing my PR, said, it's not the book, you're the person, you're the person that we need to tell the story about. Do you find that difficult if somebody doesn't want to be relevant?
Relevant as in put themselves...
It seems like a buzzword, you can be relevant or put yourself out there. Yeah,
certainly putting yourself out there. Yes, you need to bring the book to life. That's the whole thing around the whole personal branding. The same with a startup entrepreneur who doesn't want to talk about their company. They are I don't want to put myself out there. It's about the business. Well, it's not, because someone needs to tell that story. And the good thing with, with a book, you launch once, but I'm kind of a little bit anti-launch. PR and advertising and everything was always campaign driven, and we unveil and we don't ever see it until that point. And everything's secret up until then. Whereas now, if you're writing a book, you start promoting it the day before you even write the first word. So everything's pre-promoted now. So when the book comes, the audience is hopefully already locked in. But the media think, well, it's new now. That's the only chance you get. So you only get one shot at that. It's being released now. Then the challenge comes is because you're selling the book for years. So then you need to, how do you keep it relevant after the launch, post-launch? I always think the post-launch is a lot more important than the pre-launch, than the launch, because it's that longevity. And people don't necessarily rush out and buy a book then and there. they might tune into a TV show or read it over there, or they might subscribe to you or see you at a conference, or someone talks about you. I mean, we get our information, we get our tips in different ways. So that's the hard part, is to be omnipresent across multiple channels. But you will need to keep the book alive, and that's when there's the content side. So I've done it with some of my clients, but I now hand it off to, there's a woman in Adelaide who does it, and her business is, you give her the book and she'll turn it into 150 bits of social media that you can put out for the next, year. So it's just that top of mind awareness. I call them respectful reminders, just again and again and again, little information bombs to keep that relevance. But then it's a matter of, some people would rather write, some people would rather do a podcast around the book. I've seen people do podcasts in advance of launching a book. I've seen people turn their book into a podcast because it's already laid out. I've seen them add videos on top of the book. So there's more than one way to skin a cat on that regard now. But yeah, the post-launch is, and that's, I hear what you say, that's once there's a big news story, a massive news story, that was. Yep, all bets are off. It's just, but that's mainstream media. I mean, I suppose if it's more niche, then they still go about their business. I think the key today, and I work with a couple of clients on the media, so I don't do the pitching, but I work on their pitches. What's happening in the media at the time, how are we relevant, again, the word relevant, is there a topic that we can inject ourselves into that conversation, into that news story? But that means you've got to be switched on all the time. And my lawyer client, he's great with defamations, and there's defamations going on everywhere at the moment, and got the radio ringing him up left, right and centre. So he was unknown 6 months ago, and now he's done about 15 radio interviews. So he's getting pretty good at it too. Good talent.
Yeah.
Trevor, you mentioned earlier on about provide value.
Yep.
Don't expect anything in return. And you gave a pretty good example of that, your early days of sort of speaking for free and sort of provided that obviously value without expecting anything in return. Can you expand on that just a little bit about today's environment, how that actually, it sort of creates your business? I mean, if you do it too much, obviously people will accept what you're providing without paying for it. And I sort of think that I see examples of that around in various parts of the business community.
Yep.
And people just expect it for nothing anyway.
Yeah, I understand that point. Often it's actually quite contrarian thinking. It's actually the other way around. The people who are never going to, who just take all the freebies, will probably never be clients or customers anyway. There's a guy in Melbourne called Darren Rouse. He's got a business called ProBlogger. He's got a couple of businesses. He's probably one of the world's biggest bloggers, and he's got, last time I looked, he's got 2 blogs and 5 million unique visitors a month. So that makes him probably bigger than The Age. Why The Age aren't talking to them on how we can fix up The Age, I don't know. But he just always gave. His main blog was Digital Photography School, and then it went so well, people were asking him, how do I do it? How can I do that? So he created ProBlogger to teach people how to blog and become their own media channel. And he had people ask him, can you teach us how to build a good blog in a month, sort of thing. And so he wrote a series of blog posts, 31 Days to a Better Blog. And then he collated it and linked to all of them. And then I think he refreshed it and did it again. And people saying, keep doing it, but it's all here. Go here, and here it is for free. But they wanted it packaged or whatever. They were happy to pay for it. And so he did it as a PDF. He worked on it 15, 20 minutes a day for X amount of weeks. I put it up and made 70 grand on his first week. So people want to pay. If you've earned you've got to earn the right to pitch, I think. But then if you've given enough value, people will often buy and pay and or whatever just because they like you. That's a pretty powerful position to be in. But I'll give you two examples. Karen's heard one of these. That of people who are great content creators, some of the best that I've ever seen, and they just do it out of passion, humility, humanity, and value. Did I tick them all?
Funny that.
And one's called Goulet Pens. So the Goulet Pen Company is, they sell fountain pens and nibs and ink online. They're not the cheapest, but they sell premium products. The value they give is, if you don't know anything about fountain pens, and apparently there's a lot to learn about them, they've got all the 101 for the new people. But the people who buy from them, they're interested and they want to keep going, and what's the new paper and the new inks. And so they actually, they inspire people through creativity of inks and what you can do and different writing styles. And they've just done so many videos. They've done hundreds and hundreds, probably 1,000 videos now. And they've built such an audience, it's insane. So if they drop a video out each week answering people's questions about paper and ink, and 15,000 people would watch it like that, as if it was a TV show. So they've never expected anything in return. They just want to deliver value and serve an audience. And so it comes back because people go to them and no one else. They don't go to Amazon where they can buy it for half price. They go to them because they have an emotional bond to them. They did a video of our values. How many companies do videos of their values and absolutely no one's interested because it sounds like it was created in a boardroom? These guys have been living their values for a long time. Then they codified them and put them in a video, and they had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people writing comments saying, "Guys, you live your values. We love you. Yeah, da da da. What can we buy?" Like, it was insane. So that's one example. Another one is one of the oldest flour companies in America, and not this flour, but a commodity that's white, and called the King Arthur Flour Company. And they've been around for about 130 years. And, flour is a commodity, but why do people want flour? To bake. And so they support the baking industry. They support amateur bakers. They support professional bakers. They teach professional bakers how to become better bakers. They teach amateur bakers how to become better bakers. They inspire people to bake. and they've just got such an amazing following. They just keep giving it away. So they're not giving away their product. They're just giving away their expertise around the product. So, I mean, that's a great way of just inspiring people to do things. So they're not, expecting anything, but if those people follow them, if you're good at baking, what are you going to do? You're going to buy more flour. You're going to buy flour from the people who you've built an emotional connection with. So there's two really good examples. I guess the other part of it is what you might be saying is then you get people in professional services who teach you how to do things, and on the chance that you like what they do and they come to you. You could be an accountant teaching people how to do tax. You could teach them every single thing to do with tax. And you know what? They'll say, thanks for that. You do it. We see it all the time, that sort of thing. So there's a few examples. So I'm of the other school of thought. I think the more it's called the law of reciprocity. The more you give, the more you'll get back. And yes, you will have freebie seekers if you give away a lot of content, but they might never be your client anyway.
Got one more? You got time for one more.
Do you think that depends on the platform that you're serving? Because obviously TikTok and Instagram have younger audiences than, say, YouTube or Facebook.
Yep. Potentially. I mean, I guess, TikTok's very much entertainment. So you probably, although we do see people now doing face videos and just giving away information. And who is it? Who's that gardener I was telling you about? He's got millions of followers. It's crazy. And it's a bit older now. Thanks to the pandemic, it's become a bit older. And Instagram is a lot more older now too. I think that those platforms though they're kind of like the satellite to the ones that I'm talking about. They will do social, but they tend to have one anchor first. So is it a YouTube show? Is it a podcast? Is it a blog? Is it a newsletter? Is it live streaming? They tend to have one, what I call an owned media channel. So you own and control that. You want the email subscribers, you want all that. So that's your owned media territory. And then when you get your social media is really your satellite. You don't want to build, yes, you want to build an audience on it, but you want to get your audience across to your other thing. Because, you know, as we found with Facebook, you could build, companies invested heavily in building a massive audience on Facebook. And then Facebook screwed the organic reach down to 1% and said, now you're paying for it. You don't own that land, they can change the rules, they do change the rules. So I always believe that you've got to have that owned media channel first, whatever that is. Is it videos, is it live streaming, are you a blogger, you're turning into an online magazine or a podcast? And don't try and do all of them, just do one, dominate it, and then start adding on as you get better. Because as you do more content, then you need different ways to cut that content up, like a book. You know, that book should live on through content on social media.
I think it's all we have time for. We're going a little bit over time, but it's been such a good chat. Everyone give a big round of applause for Trevor.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Beautiful.
And it would be, of course, be a shame to let all of the refreshments go to waste, so please help yourself. Thanks.
Okay.